Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
The Stock Movers Podcast, your roundup of companies making moves in the stock market, harnessing the power of Bloomberg data.
Let's take a look at some of the stocks on the move today in Europe. We're joined for that by our Markets Today editor, Sam Unstead. Sam, good morning. Just the UK to talk about today, as though the European markets are all closed. Let's start with the results out of Lloyds.
Yeah, so I think for the most part, what people were watching for, particularly with Lloyds, was the motor finance probe in the UK. No great update on that. You know, we're in the midst of that, of new judgments being made there, so they're going to have to wait to see if they have to put any more money aside for that. Two, though, interesting dynamics in there. Costs were a little bit higher than expected. That was almost entirely because of the front-loading of severance payments, so people being laid off by Lloyds. They front-loaded those to the first quarter, so their costs will go down as the year goes on, but it's hit profit in the first quarter of the year. And then the other thing is that they have put aside another £100 million because they've slightly tweaked their economic forecasts, and that's to cover the potential hit from tariffs for the UK economy over the course of the next year. So you could say only £100 million at the moment, not an enormous impairment to take, but not a great sign for the way that they think the economy is going to develop over the course of the rest of the year.
It's an impairment that wouldn't have been there pre-April and pre-so-called Liberation Day. So the tariff impact being factored in by UK bank Lloyds. More on tariffs, because one of the worst hit corporate victims is also in focus for you today. GN Store Nord. What's the story there, Sam?
Yes, so we mentioned the UK is open today. Denmark is the only other major European market that is open today. GN Store Nord hearing aids, they have taken a pretty significant tariff hit. So some of this had already been priced in because there was an expectation that they would take a hit because of parts moving over, and the US obviously being a major market for all healthcare companies. But it's really slammed them kind of across the board. Their guidance has been effectively pulled. We've seen that from a couple of other companies, but this is another one to add to the list. And their shares falling a little bit in Copenhagen today on that, but maybe not as much as may have been anticipated, because some of this has already been priced in by the volatility over the course of April.
Rolls-Royce, meanwhile, saying it can power through the tariff chaos.
Yes, so GN Store Nord, particularly poor, but actually, for the most part, a lot of big companies, there's a lot of uncertainty in their outlook, so a lot of them are saying that we can't totally predict what's going to happen over the course of the next year, but most of them appear to be fairly sanguine about their ability to actually manage these costs. So Rolls-Royce, a company with a huge supply chain, parts, coming from all over the world, they feel as though they've already done enough to mitigate in the lead up to the reciprocal tariffs announcement in April, that they should be able to manage the effects over the course of the year. Remember, Rolls-Royce, one of the top performing stocks in London over the course of the last couple of years, and rising again today.
Sam, if we just take a beat this Thursday, so many of the earnings have come through. There's more to come, of course, stateside with a focus on tech. What for you have been some of the key takeaways in the context of this global trade war?
I mean, I think the really key thing, when we're coming into this, I think there was an expectation that you might see what you saw at the beginning of the pandemic, where guidance is just being pulled almost across the board because there's so much uncertainty. Rather than the guidance being pulled, I think what you're seeing is companies instead taking a kind of bit more of a wait-and-see approach. Lots of uncertainty. So I think if you go through earnings reports over the course of the last couple of months and do a search for uncertainty, you will find thousands and thousands of mentions of it. That's been more the dominant theme, rather than actually kind of pulling guidance in the way that we saw at the beginning of the pandemic. But uncertainty, I would say, is reigning.
The Stock Movers Podcast from Bloomberg Radio. Check back with us throughout the day for the latest roundup of companies making news on Wall Street. And for the latest market-moving headlines, listen to Bloomberg Radio live. Catch us on YouTube, Bloomberg.com, and on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app.